GB News.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. My next guest has photographed 7 British Prime Ministers and Al Pacino and James Bond. But his latest exhibition is not a portrait. Rather, it focuses on the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 in a show at the Chelsea Arts Club. Cambridge Jones's shots offer a glimpse into a moment of history that shook the world, and he joins me now to talk about his extraordinary work. Welcome to GB News. What took you to the Berlin Wall as it was falling?
Can I just say 7 Prime Ministers and you? Because you helped me kick my career off. So
great.
I had a musician friend in a band called Dominic Waxing Lyrical who lived in Berlin, and he said, "You've got to get over here, something's happening." And I grabbed an artist friend and we jumped on a plane, and he did charcoal drawings and I photographed it. But it was sort of the first time I'd ever sort of taken my love of photography and done something, sort of kicked off a career.
You arrived in Berlin, and what was actually happening?
There was all this buzz that, is this going to happen? And it was like a festival environment. It was a bit like Glastonbury or something, but nothing had happened. And then everyone was saying it's going to happen. And then...
Well, you get there and the wall is still intact.
Still intact. And the East German soldiers, who you could see with guns, who had shot hundreds of people by now, were beginning to be quite friendly. And you can see in some of my photos them interacting with the West and with the Western soldiers. And my artist friend did a quick sketch of an East German soldier and kind of took it up to the wall, and he took it from him, and it was just a sort of, you could sense something big was happening. It was
How did it move from this this brotherhood across the wall to the wall actually being torn down?
Well, literally in the photos, people were taking chisels and hammers and knocking holes in it, and then bulldozers came in and sort of holes would appear. And I remember seeing people flee. I can't remember the names of those East German cars, but you'd see people... Trabants, thank you. Coming out with all their belongings and going... Because suddenly they were allowed to, having risked death to do it. And actually, a German came up to me at the exhibition and said, my family got out at that point, from the East to the West. And so it was an odd mixture of sort of celebration on the West and sort of a moment of opportunity in the East. Everything is changing. Let's get out of here.
I mean, for present-day viewers, some of them may not understand the significance of this. The wall had gone up overnight in, I think, 1961, if I recall correctly. And so between 1961 and 1989, the two halves of the city were simply not allowed to communicate. And as you say, if you attempted to climb the wall from the east into the west, you would be shot, and many people died. And so tell me a bit about what you felt. You were a young man, but you weren't from that culture. Yeah. You sensed the excitement, and you sensed the moment of history too, I imagine.
Totally. You kind of felt... And what we were allowed to do then was to go into the East, suddenly, probably more freely than you... Because Checkpoint Charlie had allowed people in and out, but suddenly we could just wander in and out. And a lot of my photos are actually the surprising nature of East Berlin and the kind of relative decrepitude of the buildings and the... you're half a mile apart and you're in an entirely different world. You just felt the lack of affluence and... Although,
of course, the greatest monuments of Berlin were in East Berlin.
Yes.
Unter den Linden, the Opera House, the museums, these were all in East Berlin.
Right, so sometimes the Western, and you may have even done this yourself, but you'd have these sort of entourages going through in their cars to see the opera or something. And the Brandenburg Gate as well was on the other side of the wall. In fact, in a lot of my photographs, you can see the Brandenburg Gate behind the East German soldiers. It recurs again and again, unintentionally. Wasn't there a famous story where somebody on the way to the opera, one of the politicians decided not... Do you remember this? And they used the fact that they weren't getting an answer to just... No, I think the East Germans wouldn't let them through or something until they got the answer. And also, wasn't the whole... You'll know more than I do about this, but wasn't the whole point that there'd been a miscommunication when they said, yeah, you can let them through, don't shoot them, open the wall up?
No, you know more than I do there. I've just been filming in Hungary, and that was interesting because the fence between Hungary and Austria was first de-electrified,
Right.
And then people were allowed to pass through. And so when you got to Berlin, this was the culmination of some events that had swept across Eastern Europe and were affecting the Soviet bloc. Let's just talk a bit about you and your career. So you've been mainly noted for shooting celebrities. How did you get into it all?
Well, honestly, I've brought this. This is the very first catalogue I ever had. Can I show that?
Yeah, you can show it, yeah.
So that is the catalogue in 2004. And I asked 120 famous people whether they'd be in my show. And you were one of the early people to say yes. And the whole theme of this was you had to choose your favourite piece of music.
Just tilt it from the top forward a bit. There we go. That's beautiful. Yeah.
And it was beautiful because, honestly, off the back of this, a whole career took place. And that's what's led to the 7. And you chose... Do you know what you chose?
You reminded me just before I came here. I chose Nights in the Garden of Spain by Manuel de Falla.
Exactly, and therefore we shot what looks like Spain in Granada, but actually is the top of a building in High Street, Kent. And it was through the generosity of people like yourself that a whole career took off. And it's just interesting to note that a moment of generosity can lead to that.
Well, that's fabulous. Whom have you most enjoyed photographing?
It's been such an extraordinary career. I mean, it literally goes from sort of Al Pacino through to Take That. The honest answer is it's not who, it's how good is the photograph.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So
I'm sure that is right. So tell me, which have been the best photographs that's come to your mind straight away?
Al Pacino. I did a whole shoot with Al Pacino and it was rubbish. And he looked like my grandmother when he opened the door in LA. And then afterwards, he sat by the pool in the shade, just relaxing, and started talking to me. And I thought, that's the moment, I'll take him. By the way, as I left the house today, my wife said, oh, don't wear that jacket again. And I said, but it's Michael Portillo. Yeah. I can wear that jacket.
Exactly. Perfect excuse. So your exhibition is at the Chelsea Arts Club, but that's only available to members and guests.
Yeah.
So we jolly well hope that your Berlin Wall exhibition will move elsewhere before too long.
Yeah, or we'll get it online so people can see it online somewhere.
OK, super. Cambridge Jones, lovely to make your acquaintance again.
Thank you, Mike.
To re-establish contact. Thank you for coming in. Coming up, Sir Nicholas Kenyon will be here to discuss his encounter with the Venezuelan conductor Gustavo Dudamel and the legacy of the social programme known as El Sistema. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.